Governor Charlie Crist's Declaration of Independence is the biggest political story in America, and it's our sole topic on this special edition of Power Play with Safety Review founder Justin Safey. Justin, the whole political world is talking about Charlie Crist leaving the Republican Party. He'll make it to the November ballot as an independent candidate for the U.S. Senate. Wow.
It's a remarkable decision. It's an earthquake here in Florida politics. 10 years after Florida was the center of the political universe, here we are again. We're the center of the political universe again. Charlie Crist is the center of that big story, and this is uncharted territory. It's unprecedented. There's no textbook example as to how you win a race as an independent voter in Florida, or even how you win a race as a Democrat or Republican running in a three-person race for U.S. Senate.
Well, critics and cynics are going to say the only electoral math that could work for him to win is as an independent, where in some polls he's ahead. But the fact of the matter is, if you take it at face value, the governor said, political system broken as we know it.
Right. And, his speech that he gave today was a lot of the things that you would expect him to say. He said he doesn't support ideas because they're Republican or Democrat. That's going to appeal to a lot of people in the middle. The question is, are there enough people are there enough voters that are willing to vote against their party? Are there enough Republicans that are willing to vote against their party? Are there enough Democrats that are willing to vote against their party? That's the big question that will determine whether Charlie Crist can actually pull this off and win this race.
Well, maybe the governor's looking at his own history. In statewide races, other than the sacrifice to Bob Graham in a U.S. Senate race years ago, education commissioner, attorney general, and governor, all those races, arguably, he won with crossover votes from Democrats and some independents.
Right, absolutely. I mean, he has appeal amongst Democratic moderates, amongst independent voters, and amongst moderate Republicans. Obviously, it's going to be interesting to see what Kendrick Meek does and what Marco Rubio do in terms of, do they play strictly to their base and just try to turn out their base, or do they start their general election campaign immediately and start moderating their views to peel some of those Crist supporters into their camps and build an electoral plurality, which will be enough to win the election for them?
In his remarks, the governor referenced that he doesn't have a big party behind him now, and he's going straight to the people. Now, while this worked in Connecticut for Joe Lieberman, in a big bellwether state like Florida, the governor becomes the prince of national politics if he can pull off this victory.
Absolutely. I mean, as he said, it's uncharted territory, and he's going to have some challenges. He doesn't have any party supporting him. He doesn't have the infrastructure. He doesn't have the fundraising. There are a lot of things that Charlie Crist doesn't have that he's always had to help him in the past. However, he's still the incumbent governor of this state. He's been on the ballot statewide many times. Neither one of his two candidates have been on the statewide ballot in the past, and as the incumbent governor, he has the ability to make news every day of the week, and he still does have the biggest war chest of any other candidate. So while there are some weaknesses and some challenges, he does have some inherent strengths.
And yet he also has to continue to be governor. While it's an advantage, a disadvantage would be the oil spill, any bad hurricane. He's got to handle any crisis or any problem that comes his way.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things I think has been the biggest challenge for him in the primary against Marco Rubio, who's essentially been a full-time candidate, while Governor Crist has had to govern the state and really hasn't been able to do much campaigning. I think with the end of the legislative session, with him declaring that he's now going to run as an independent voter, the general election campaign starts now, and I bet we're going to see him spending a lot more time on the campaign trail trying to motivate voters.
But overnight, he's taken some of the wind out of the sails of the Rubio campaign, because now he's the darling of the national story about the Florida Senate race.
Well, okay, two things on that. One is, I think that Crist is now going to try to wear the outsider mantle, and that was the mantle that Marco Rubio had worn so well. Now Crist is going to say, I'm the outsider, I'm running against Washington, and that's the stake he's going to claim in the race. And I think that that's something that we're going to see Crist try to be the outsider and attempt to outmaneuver Rubio on that front. And it was interesting because Rubio's gotten a lot of Washington endorsements.
Sure.
And so that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. The second thing is, I think ultimately this is going to turn into a two-person race. I don't know who those two people are going to be, but whoever consistently polls in third place is going to have a hard time getting media attention and voter attention. So that's a dangerous place to be.
It's like the new political edition of American Idol all of a sudden. What's the governor lose? He loses all that party support, but does he gain the real ability to say he's an outsider?
I think he's going to try to make that claim, and whether voters accept it or not remains to be seen. But certainly, that's the pitch that he's going to make to voters, that he's the outsider, even though he's an incumbent governor.
And in the opening of his remarks, he referenced that he will be on the ballot in November, something that wasn't assured, with polls showing him way behind Marco Rubio in a Republican primary.
Right, absolutely. I mean, for him, the general election electorate is a much friendlier electorate to him than Republican primary voters only. And I think that gives him a better chance to win than facing Marco Rubio in a Republican primary.
It's pretty darn exciting to be in Florida politics, or on the fringe of it, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's going to be a great spectator sport for the next 6 months, and traffic to the website has been through the roof. We broke another record this month, so there's a lot of interest in it in Florida and around the country. So I'm going to be watching just as closely as I'm sure you and a lot of our viewers will.
Well, it's great to have you here as a guest on a program that you co-produce. Thanks very much. For the latest political news, go to the Safety Review, Justin Safety's Safety Review, and we'll see you next time on Power Play.